Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Weekend in, weekend out, Motorsport Australia officials are making waves. From waving flags, waving cars through pit lane, or responding to a wave for help. Wave hello to new lifelong friends. Who knows, you might just make waves around the world. Ride the first wave. Search Motorsport Australia officials today.
Round 2 of the Formula Vee National Esport Cup. It's a Motorsport Australia Esports series, and we've got some of the best sim racers and also some of the best Formula Vee drivers from around Australia together for this championship. And the racing has been nothing short of exceptional, unpredictable, and also very, very close. So for round 2, we find ourselves at Okayama International Circuit. Very different, I think, to Silverstone International layout where we were last time 3 weeks ago. And for this one, should be very, very interesting how the back straight but also the twistier sections of this track play out compared to the form guide we've seen so far. Now, Southern Cross Esports, Motorsport Australia Esports, VRace Experience, Echuca Toyota and Giant Mandurah bringing us this one, the coverage, the championship, and it is going to be a proper full season with lots of rounds, and they are ahead of us after this round 2 at Okayama though. So it's qualifying just now, and then we get into the racing. We look forward to that. The way these Formula V's race against each other, wheel to wheel, always so exciting. David Haynes with Dan Yeaman, isn't that right, Dan?
It is indeed. Thank you for the introduction, David. And sorry for filling in, although, well, on behalf of Scott Rankin, hope he's doing a little bit better tonight, but hopefully he'll be back on the mic for tomorrow night's broadcast here at SimSpeed as we have a look here at the Google Earth track map, starting, of course, with the view above Japan, zooming down in to the southern half of the main island. And yeah, a couple of hours down from Tokyo, David, but yeah, fantastic little circuit here that is definitely familiar to all of us on iRacing, to say the least.
I always want to call them, northern and southern bits, but apparently Japan loves to call them western and eastern bits. So I reckon this is a western bit, and it's a circuit that's been around since the 90s and hosted 2 Formula One World Championship races, I believe both of which were won by Michael Schumacher in a Benetton. It hasn't changed a whole lot since then, really. I think maybe just a little bit of the pit entry has been modernized, and they got rid of one of the shorter layouts to just give us the full layout. And also it's called the Piper Circuit, the tiny little one. But the corners to look out for most of all are, I think, the first corner and that hairpin. The longest straight is from turn 4 at Wood, which is off camber, up the hill and then down the straight towards a very tight but slightly banked hairpin. The rest of the back half of the lap from there, quite twisty. And then a good run off the final corner can set you up again in towards turn number 1. The pit straight just a little bit wider than the whole rest of the circuit, and then narrows up after that point. But in Formula V's, I mean, you don't need a whole lot for it to be super close racing. They are not high horsepower cars. They are lightweight though, and any significant amount of time at full throttle, kicks in the slipstream and the drafting effect and really closes up the cars behind, could see us fan out 3 wide or more on that back straight towards the hairpin.
Yeah, indeed. Momentum is the name of the game in these small, non-aero equipped open wheel machines, given low power and radial tyres too, to make things a little bit interesting through the turns. Before we get to the racing action, here's a look at how things stand after the opening round of the championship back at Silverstone 3 weeks ago. Caleb Black sits on top of the standings there with 225 points to his name. 27-point gap back to Brody Watts in second there on 198. Then it starts closing up a bit quickly here, David, especially to P3 there, with just 4 points from Brody back to Kyle Ridley in third. And then only another 14 points back to Lee Partridge in fourth place there in 180. And still fairly close, another 14 points back again to round out your top 5 there with Trevor Hearn.
Racing was definitely unpredictable at Silverstone, which was a higher speed circuit with less corners and longer straights. So certainly some drivers that showed well there, but really didn't bag the points they would have expected to. We come to, I think, a more traditional layout here at Okayama International Circuit, and maybe a little more representative of what Australian tracks look like, for example. That is our round 2, and then it's Barber Motorsport Park Short A, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park Motorsport, Alton Park Circuit without Britons, Sandown International Motor Raceway. Do I need to tell our viewers too much more about that one? Watkins Glen Raceway, and then the finale, October 4th, is at Phillip Island Grand Prix Circuit. That one, ridiculous as far as the average speeds go. Very, very high speed, and be an exciting championship finale then. Looking at our racing tonight, though, at Okayama. The qualifying is right now, and then we have 3 races, each of them 20 minutes, with a reverse top 20 from race 1 into race 2, purely progressive from race 2 into race 3.
I have to say, coming in for this broadcast tonight, unfortunately, on short notice, not quite getting a chance to be fully up to speed with how round 1 went for these drivers. A top 20 invert, David. That's going to be very, very interesting to watch from my perspective, as we're focusing here on Kyle Ridley. Currently 9th on his final lap here in qualifying in the number 7 Frog Leap Juice Racing entry. Looking to improve, and I think he might just go P1 with that time. He will indeed, up 9 spots, and half a tenth to his name is the advantage he's able to eke out at the top of the board.
Purple first and second sectors for Kyle Ridley on his way to that, but here's Glenn Riddell. He's got personal bests all so far, but no purples to this point. He's got to find a full half a second over the time Kyle Ridley just put down on his best to be able to improve. So he jumps to 6th. He found a couple tenths there, but not enough to take away pole. Most drivers have completed their qualifying at this point, so we're picking up the few that haven't, with Alex Newton here in 11th at the moment, second of 2 laps and looking to improve. Got a top 20 invert from race 1 into race 2, and it's a 28 car grid at the moment. So that is definitely more getting shaken up than not when we get to that point.
Just Alexander Newton, final driver to get a time in the session. Apologies for cutting you off there. So that will mean the grid is set for race number 1 of 3 here tonight. So congratulations to Kyle Ridley there, securing your pole position for the qualifying session here. And just noticing a little bit in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to see the times whilst we go through the grid, David, because we've got ourselves a dead heat for P3, which has to be resolved, at least in the favour of one of our drivers. So Caleb Black getting out on top of Josh Burden there, despite the fact that they are tied to the millisecond here tonight, as we do come to the grid on screen.
Now, you and I both see it tied to the millisecond. iRacing might see an extra 4th decimal place there or something. In fact, it does, in the favour of Caleb Black. This is the grid just for race number 1, though, because race number 2, race number 3 decided on the results of the preceding races. Kyle Ridley has the pole from Thor Tuller, Caleb Black, Josh Burden, Brody Watts, and Glenn Riddell has the top 6. Behind them, we've got Sean McKenzie and Lee Partridge. You know, those 2 fellas are buddies. Sean Chapman and Matt Anderson, the row behind. Alex Newton and Cam Edwards, 11th and 12th inside of the top 20 is absolutely where you want to be by the end of race number 1, when they invert that result into the grid of race number 2. So Stephen Butcher, Matthew Harriott, Liam Caplice, Ray Oliver, Franz Estabauer, and Cameron Dawes are still inside of that top 20, and the last drivers making it up are James Rosso and Tony Baker. The outside of that invert, looking in and hoping to move up in race number 1, James Nesbitt, Brendan Nealon, Damien Spinks, Trevor Hearn, Jordan Bialek, Patrick Harding, and that is indeed it. 26 Vs it is. Time runs out. They're going to grid up for race 1 of 3, all of them 20 minutes around this track. That should be 11 or 12 laps, a good Formula V distance. You get a great look at exactly how ridiculously mountainous this area of Japan is and how much work they had to do to fit a racetrack in where they did.
100%, yeah. Even just the Google Earth view as we were looking at the circuit earlier on. Yeah, just the way carve out this small little plateau, if you will, almost out of the mountains of the region. But all the same, has done a lovely job as a result. As you said, yeah, hosted the Pacific Grand Prix, it was known, back in 1990s twice. But yeah, now very much the home of national level racing in Japan. And for those of us on iRacing, base content, certainly many a Mazda MX-5 or Formula Vee these days, maybe a Ray FF1600 race around here too, as we await the countdown to the green. As of course, with the manual safety cars at the back of the grid, David, will see us wait about another minute or so before we get underway here tonight.
Interesting note about the standing start here is Kyle Ridley starts on the front row ahead of everyone else, but he starts on the outside line. So it's the grippy side of the track, but it maybe makes it harder to cover off turn 1 if you don't get a great launch. 4 speeds in the gearbox, first and second to get away from the grid. And then you'll probably never see those gears again as you go back and forth between 3rd and 4th in racing conditions in a Formula V. They've got about 15-second board out there. The drivers all sitting, waiting, thinking about where they're going to rev the engine to and how they're going to drop the clutch when the green flag tells them go. And really is Kyle Ridley's to lose from that pole position towards turn number 1. Red lights on. Lights off as race number 1 gets underway, and not an especially great launch out of 5th place. And Kyle Ridley already coming under a little bit of pressure. He's going to have to swoop around the outside of turn number 1 if he's going to hold on to the race lead, because Thortalla gets to that inside, but then the track immediately sweeps back to the left-hand side in a slightly off camber corner. Looks like Ridley is just going to be able to hold on to that race lead. Cold tyres all through the field through an off-camber corner in close proximity could lead to problems, but it doesn't. And they've got to work their way through the S's and towards Atwood Curve, where the lead battle immediately ferocious from Ridley, who's got to keep defending it. Joshua Burden, you see him there, just trying to sneak his way into the fight.
First car around in the Atwood Curve is the 88 of Matt Anderson. Thankfully, no one else entangled with him, so he'll be able to rejoin the race. But now, right down in P number 26, as we keep our eyes on the front of the field. Ridley, Teller, Black, Burden. Your sort of first 4, your first 4 cars. It's going to be Black up the inside of Tiller, and maybe Ridley 2 for 1 as Burden will try and follow through up the inside of the hairpin for the first time, and it will be the 143 of Black to the front for a moment, and then Burden challenging now around the outside of Revolver and Piper here, and he will get his nose ahead and basically clear through turn 7 there, David.
That back straight is the action zone, and it sees Caleb Bellac able to go through to the race lead. They are tossing, fighting, jockeying for position behind that. 2 wide through this series of hairpins that link directly into each other, and it goes on. Bellac able to build a little bit of a race lead over the squabbling cars behind. Still Burden, and then Tuller and Ridley side by side as they've been so far on this lap. But now it's 3rd and 4th, not 1st and 2nd. Looking at Lee Partridge in 6th, looking to go single file through the final corner. Track opens up a little bit on the exit. You carry speed, and the leader leads them like an Indy 500 leader to one side of the track, back to the other, then back to the racing line. Cam Edwards has had a problem in the final corner, and he's dropped back significantly. Big pinch in turn number 1, and the pinch becomes a bite as Brody Watts and others go around. Glenn Riddle finds the wall.
It's unfortunate there. It's also tripped up the 101 of Sam Chapman on the outside of the corner. And the rest of the field seems to have mostly gotten away with it. And saying that, though, I did see it looked like Brody Watts clambering all over Glenn's car as he ended up broadside to the circuit. Look at that there, 3 wide still. There's an ambitious lunge in the mid-pack as we're looking at Alexander Newton there for a moment. And this is the fight from 8th all the way back probably to about 15th, I'd say, David. It's a little hard to say because the margins are fairly large given the low speeds. Yeah, that's
so close. Coming down the back straight here. They're 3 wide here. Caplice is meeting the sandwich. They're always 4 wide coming in to the hairpin here, and Caplice looks to go around the outside. Sean McKenzie gets bossed up high a little bit. You can still carry speed in that hairpin corner there. The way that the banking works, there's no grip as the track drops away off camber in that left-hander and then into the next. There is a tiny bit of contact between McKenzie and Franz Estebauer in the blue car you see dropping back, and everyone looks to get down the inside of him in the short connecting run into the next hairpin. It's twisty from here all around to the start-finish line.
And to building an 1/8 of a second margin, Caleb Black has had the top 4 immediately range back up to his, well, the gearbox of his Formula Vee. Josh Burden leads Carl Ridley and Thor Tuller as the Serpentine begins once again. No, Burden not going to follow all the way to the inside wall here. See if he can set something up. Looking for the inside at turn 1, but he's not quite there under brakes. But you do have, that looks like Thortilla up to 3rd, past Carl Ridley down the front stretch. And was challenging for half a moment there into that first corner. We've got 2x2 further on in the pack in the next group, which is, yeah, as you said, is basically 6th on back. They're starting to fan out now with this action here as drivers scrapping for every spot we can get. Already almost 5 minutes into this opening race of 3 here tonight.
Top 4 getting away. Lee Partridge in 5th in a bit of no man's land, and this is what we saw kick off in turn number 1. Glenn Riddle, easy to spot in red and yellow. He gets a little sideways. It causes a check up behind him. Of course, 3 or 4 cars get into when they're racing that close and they've got no space or time to react, and that was what happened in turn number 1. This is what's happening right now for the lead of the race as Joshua Burton had his nose in front, has to go to the outside of the corner, finds no speed there, and Caleb Bellack maintains his race lead. Burton manages to maintain his 2nd, Tuller is 3rd, and Kyle Ridley in 4th. This group behind, as crazy as they have ever been, jostling over their 6th, 7th, etc. And there'll come a point where we have to put the magnifying glass on P20 as well. There's a lot happening between now and the end of this race.
Bit of a hip barge there from, I think that was Alexander Newton, and also getting into the side of Ray Oliver there at turn number 8. Redmond here on their 3rd lap of this race. And looks like, thankfully, both drivers carry on without too much effect, but does push Oliver down a spot with Matthew Harriott getting in between the two of them in the process. And this time, we're going to stay mostly on the racing line, it seems, wherever we look here, as Oliver up the inside of Harriott for turn 1. We'll take a spot back in the background there. That's Stefan Butcher looking for the inside of Franz Estebauer. And he's getting a nose ahead, I think, but Estebauer's still there. David will easily challenge this one back into turn 2 and have his nose ahead by the time he gets there even.
Not a lot of grip with the off-camber or with the curbing in towards turn number 2, but the inside's still the place to be for Estebauer to try to defend his position. Also feels pretty off-camber on the exit of Atwood Corner where the leaders are right now, and Caleb Bellack. You'd say that the normal racing line's probably the middle of the road or the left of the road there, but he's all the way to the white line, the other side, seeing how much grip and momentum you can carry with the inside into the hairpin here, and squeezes Joshua Burden around the outside of him in the hairpin. Burden not going to give up as much room this time as he did last time, but still, you just can't carry speed around the outside there by the looks of it. Bellack is defending very robustly to make sure he has the inside line into that hairpin. No one else can have it. Your top 4 as they were, but Good lap, last lap from Lee Partridge, who you spot in 5th, and Brody Watts also in 6th. Someone's in the wall, though, and it looks like Liam Caplice had a torrid time at Silverstone, and it continues at Okayama.
Yeah, we'll have to try and catch that one on the replay as he's emerging a swarm of pole pursuit cars, and looks like, unfortunately, Dave, it's going to be a solo spin. Bit too wide on exit. Yep, way out in the grass, and catches the tyre wall for good measure there. But I think he can then drive away here, and well, as far as I'm seeing on my live feed, he hasn't been too affected. It's back to live pitches and back to the lead. Once again, we go.
Belak wants that inside line everywhere they go, but with the S's of 1 and 2, I think around the outside of 1, can put you to the lead in turn number 2 if Burden can carry enough momentum, which he can, to keep the fight going in turn number 2. Tulla and Kyle Ridley don't quite know what to make of it at the moment, but Lee Partridge knows what to make of it. He's flying along, and he's actually catching our top 4 at the moment as they battle, and as Belak needs to continue to be defensive to keep his race lead. And Tulla now up in a second. Burden, a wide run out of here with good speed. Kyle Ridley there with him as well. As Belak leads them on this little wild goose chase down the straights, it is not giving them outright speed to Partridge.
Look at the move there from Kyle Ridley. I think he just went from the right side of the circuit to try and get the inside, and has decided, all right, I'll go the outside this time. Burden, though, has got the inside of the hairpin on this occasion from Belak, and that gets him the lead for now, but Belak's going to force the issue back again, this time at turn 6, 2 by 2 for your top 4. Lovely bit of car control and awareness there from everyone, though, as they then sort that one out. Back single file off the exit of turn number 7, but here comes Burden once again, this time for the Redmond hairpin up the inside, but he's in a bit deep, perhaps. Not quite from that angle once we get to the apex, it seems, and he will take the lead. Belak, though, wants it back the inside of turn 9.
Burden wanted to close that door, and Belak just had his foot in it to prevent it from latching and hold on to this race lead, but it's a risky game to play, not even at the halfway point of the first of 3 races tonight, and knowing that, you know, if you drop out of the top 20 or with a DNF here in race number 1, horrible starting position for race number 2, would probably put you on the back foot for that race, and then give you the same for race number 3. They are fighting for all they're worth with it. Burden gets to the inside. Belak then opens it up to try to carry that speed around the outside. You see Tulla trying to do the same. Lee Partridge has caught them in a 5-way fight. Brody Watts will be the next. And this is exactly how he did it. He thought, I can still get to the inside here. That's not closed off. And he just managed to stay in there.
Possibly a tiny bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, but neither driver adversely affected. And yeah, these guys certainly are giving it a good ringer. And yeah, in the process, as you said, Lee Partridge making sure to keep a steady momentum. He's doing a good job. Oh, second pack, though. Trouble for Ray Oliver. And it's caught 3 cars. Franz Esterbauer involved, and also looks like Stephen Butcher, the number 13. These guys were fighting over 12th spot, but they've now all gone around at Atwood, and they'll drop back to the back of the teens. It's Butcher, actually, who inherits the 20th place spot in the moment. As back we go to the lead, David, because these guys won't give it up, but Belak still leads. Thor Tulla, though, up into second as we get right on board with Lee Partridge.
A couple laps ago, it looked silly to think that Lee Partridge would be able to catch the leaders, but he has, because they really started fighting early. So I'll keep looking into that same crystal ball, because apparently it's got some clarity. I reckon Brody Watts is going to get him the way they're going. He's only got to find that half a second, and he'd start catching the slipstream off this man, Lee Partridge, and be part of our leaders, and then it could get very interesting in the final couple of laps. Looking back at the mid-pack, maybe a little bit of a lock-up. Our friend in white tags Ray Oliver, and then the next car to arrive on the scene, Franz Esterbauer, also gets looped around.
So, how's this for looking at lap times? We're about to start another one here, so we'll see what the lap times look like as they've been squabbling still. And it improves quite a bit, actually, for these guys, as this time it's Tulla trying to go around the outside of turn 1, but no dice. As Belak maintains the momentum on exit. But on lap number 5, the top 4 did 152s and lost a second and a half to Lee Partridge through their scrapping. On that last particular, personal best though for Brody Watts, a 150.5. With the way that Belak's racing, that's 7 tenths gained. He'll probably need at least 2 more laps to be properly in it, but they're going at it there through Atwood. And yeah, on top of your screen there, some unfortunate news Although it looks like it has cleared up on my end for the number 20 of Liam Caplice. He got a mechanical black flag off that one. There's Stephen Butcher also getting dangerous. Here we go. Three wide.
Burden's 2 times on the grass. He touches Belak and he forces his way back to the inside like Belak did on him not so long ago. 3 wide into this hairpin. It behaves a little bit like the Nürburgring carousel, I think. If you're on the inside and you hook that little gutter, you can carry way more speed. Burden goes to the lead, but there was half a car width and he forced his V through, making a little bit of contact with Caleb Belak. It was very much on the edge, but also very exciting.
And Lee Partridge almost made it up the middle, and we could have easily had 4 wide at the braking marker for the hairpin, but he chose the discretion in that one there. And I expect these lap times will absolutely tumble as we go on board with the replay with Josh Burden. And as he said, Balak thinks he's got it covered, but no, he's left half a V. And even when he tries to shut it down to less than half a V, Burden just says, I'm already here, mate. I've got left sides on the asphalt. That's enough. And so, as you said, forces the issue, takes a spot, a little bit of a nudge to make sure he's completely on the racetrack when he hits the brakes, and job done. But Brody Watts has arrived on the scene with all of this as Balak outside. He's going to swing all the way around. Burden has actually got clamped there on the approach to the corner, and he's going to drop back to P3 here on the exterior, maybe even P4, but Partridge not close enough to force the issue.
Yeah, just not a good entry into 1, and he was kind of boxed in by the drivers behind him and the driver alongside of him, and Caleb Balak swooped through like you can do in turn number 1 to get ahead. And now Tuller in second. Problems here for Matt Anderson. He's in that 19th position at the moment. Franz Estebauer in the 20th. Remember that 20th place in this race goes to the pole position for race number 2. James Nesbitt has a whole lot to fight for. I think the car in front might even have some damage here. So this is a battle for pole of race number 2. Nesbitt goes through into it. The race lead. I don't know what to make of it other than Belak looks like he's holding on for the moment, and the drivers behind squabbling a little that could let him get away. Burden from Ridley Tuller. Brody Watts up into 5th. Lee Partridge content to sit in 6th just for the moment.
Well, yeah, 1 lap of reprieve for Caleb Balak as your current race leader, but I don't see how this group of cars are going to let him off the hook any longer as we're coming up to the end of our 8th lap of racing, and well, by the time they get round to the start finish, trying to be awfully close to 5 minutes remaining to get us into the final quarter on the clock at least, or this opening race of 3 around the final corner, which is aptly named last corner here at Okayama. And the Serpentine starts again. Balak wanting to defend, and they've now got lap traffic they're going to have to contend with. This is Patrick Harding on board the 93 machine, David, and the leaders. Well, at the moment, they're a speck in there off the rear view camera, but as they come around the first couple of corners, they're closing him down quite rapidly here.
Now seems like as great a time as ever to check out Patrick Harding cam as well. Leaders catching up on him, and we had the video beforehand at the start of the broadcast. Great work that Motorsport marshals do all around Australia. Patrick Harding, very, very proudly one of them, and he is decked out head to toe to stay on the lead lap here. He has got the best view in his mirrors. I think flag marshals have some of the best view at the real racetracks as well. A lot happening behind him as once again Caleb Balak goes all the way to the white line, right-hand side, claiming dibs on the inside of the hairpin, and that seems like the best place to be, the way these cars handle. You want that short run and the more banking at the apex. He's got to hold middle of the road to stop Burden throwing the nose down the inside at the next left-hander, but your top 6 Vs in about 6 V lengths, which is not very far because they are quite small cars.
Yeah, at most we're talking maybe 3 car lengths excess gap in between here as we go to double live view battle for 7th on the bottom of the screen is Sam Chapman. Unfortunately, the 101s dropped out of that group as your leaders on the top half of your screen closing in on Harding here. Going to be just under, approaching 3 minutes to go when they complete lap number 9. And in fact, they're a little worried about Patrick here. Balak on the radio. I think trying to flag, because in fact, here we go. Balak wants to keep the momentum. He's got to dive to the inside here as Harding now slows down a bit, I think, on the front straight. He'll let the whole group go, but now Balak vulnerable at turn 1 once again, David. Here comes Burden to the outside.
He got just a little bit balked, but I don't think Harding did anything unreasonable at all. Just wanted to hold his line, be predictable, and they all went around him in due course as it happened. So top 6 survived. Not a whole lot changes because of that. No real ability to pull any surprises. And the group behind Sean McKenzie leads from Matthew Harriet to a buddy as well. But will they be at the end of this race if it all ends in tears? Belak has been so defensive in the top of screen, and he's got 2 more laps. Kyle Ridley looks like he gets a mega drive up out of Atwood. Slipstream's off the leader, but he won't be able to get to the inside. He's boxed in, no car width to the left-hand side. They're 3 wide in front of him, and he has got absolutely nowhere to go. Belak has the inside. It looks
Brody
like
Watts.
Ridley, with nowhere to go, as around the outside goes Thortulla.
Brody Watts was actually got up the outside of all of them there. And it was Belak, just a shocking run, really prioritising the defensive line. Got himself planted, and it just checked everyone up. And it actually, Brody Watts the first to take full advantages. Trouble in the second pack. Alexander Newton's gone around in the number 6 machine. Drops down to 12th place through the middle of turn 6 there. Unfortunately, it looks like 6s are not coming up strong here at the end of race number 1. As back we go to this front pack, and it's now Belak, Watts, Ridley, your top 3 in the train. Burden's been shuffled back to P4 on this, the penultimate lap. We will get the white flag from Barney here, David, when they come across the line with about 1 minute and 20 seconds. When they get there, they're lapping in the 1 minute 50s. First race is almost done, but Caleb Belak's got 1 more lap left to defend here.
Barney's Japanese cousin, Barney-san, with the white flag for race 1 of 3, and Belak again with the race lead. The gloves are off behind as Lee Partridge, Joshua Burden and Thortulla begin to battle over these positions, maybe letting the top 3 get away just a little bit side by side in turn 2 there between Burden and Tulla, as Partridge, who sat at the back of this group for a while, looks to strike on the final lap. Brody Watts is shaping up to try to put the pressure on Caleb Belak. Again, is just going to play the same game I think we've seen him play the last 6 or 7 laps. A reasonable drive out of Atwood, get to the right-hand side of the circuit, hold the inside into the hairpin. But immediately, Brody Watts takes the slipstream, pulls out. Kyle Ridley looks to leapfrog all of them, going middle of the road for Caleb Belak, and then trying to break a little early, but they touch on the outside. Belak goes through into the lead. Ridley and Watts spin out. Lee Partridge goes to second with Burden in third and Thortulla in fourth. Group behind still battling as well, but second and third have taken each other out as they tried to go 3 wide, breaking late as they dared into the hairpin on the final lap.
That was unfortunately big error from Brody Watts there. Somehow they've still dropped back only to 5th and 6th as Lee Partridge had the car sideways through the Redmond hairpin here, trying to hang on to it ahead of Josh Burden. And I think now this is most definitely Caleb Belak's race to lose, nearly a second in hand as he comes to the last corner for the end of the first race of 3. Josh Burden wants one final piece of the pie. He's close, David, but he's going to have to fix the run-up to the checkered flag. Pulls out of the slipstream early. Can he get there? No, Partridge will hang on. That'll be Belak from Partridge from Burden, your first podium of the night here.
Nope, the checkered flags later on. Partridge has nicked it from Burden, but Caleb Belak, championship leader, does an amazing job under immense pressure to try to extend that championship lead in towards the end of race number 1. He's starting from 20th in race number 2, though. The rest of the field's coming around to take the checkered flag. It's up, not at that line, but up here where Barney is. So might have another opportunity. They look like they let off too early there.
It's a bit of an odd one there indeed, yeah.
Fuel. No way they all ran out of fuel together.
We've also had reports, unfortunately, drop out for one of our drivers on the track. And Matt Anderson indeed plummets all the way down the order and was 18th, but scored as finishing 25th.
Race 1 results are finalised now then with that. And of course, factor the top 20 invert after this to set the grid for race number 2. Caleb Belak from Lee Partridge and Joshua Burden, look how close they were. Second and third there, with Lee Partridge stealing it between the final corner and Barney San. Tortella, Kyle Ridley, Brody Watts, Sean McKenzie, Trevor Hearn, Matthew Harriet, and Sam Chapman as that top 10. But then the drivers who are going to be starting in the top 10 for race number 2 that's gridding up right now. It's Cameron Dawes, Alex Newton, Ray Oliver, Glenn Riddle, James Rosso, Brendan Neal and Cam Edwards, Tony Baker, Franz Estebauer and James Nesbitt will be on the pole position, with Estebauer in second. The drivers behind missing out: Liam Caplice, Damien Spinks, Stephen Butcher, Matthew Bielak, last driver on the lead lap, Matt Anderson, Patrick Harding going off the lead lap, and I think that's our Brave Race Control, those 2 names behind. So they're ready straight into race number 2, top 20 reverse grid. And it's an immense amount of pressure on your pole sitter. It's an immense amount of work for our podium from race number 1 to fight through from 20th, 19th and 18th on the grid in just 11 laps. They're underway with Nesbitt getting a good jump. Tony Baker with a really good one as well, as Franz Estebauer drops back 1 spot. But Nesbitt on the cold tyres immediately goes wide, and Tony Baker takes the race lead.
Looks like the answer is, yeah, inside line is definitely the best line on lap 1. Got to give it a moment for you to get some confidence underneath you. On board with Lee Partridge, the driver now in P20 off of the race start. Small trouble, unfortunately, for Damien Spinks in number 75. He's gone around on the entry to turn 2 and has dropped back to the 25th and final spot. It looks like, unfortunately, Matt Anderson not taking the grid, and that dropout taking a while to recover itself. And with the rapid turnaround from race 1, he will be probably a lap down at this rate. There's trouble now. Oh, Damien Spinks, more trouble in the 75. Now at Atwood Curve, as we keep our eyes on the lead pack. Look at them fan out 2, if not 3 wide for this opening lap here. They come on down to this. And oh no, we've got Tony Baker around on the outside of the hairpin here, and everyone's going to have to watch out as they come around, David.
Too bold on the cold tyres around the outside, didn't find enough grip, lost the rear and immediately drops back into an absolute beehive of cars here. Franz Estebauer goes to the lead with that one.
Oh, Balak's involved with Baker.
Behind.
Caleb Balak's gotten entangled with Tony Baker there, as Baker was just recovering, and now all of a sudden, yeah, turn 7 has become bedlam there for a couple of cars. The rest of the hairpin, the final hairpins, absolute chaos there. As a bit back and forth on the radio with race control, not quite picking up as we're going to go to a replay here. See, and yeah, Balak up the inside late there, David. Plenty of cars on the outside of Tony that he's worried about, I think, as well.
Yeah, my, oh my. This is back live. Cam Edwards now leads the way in red and black. Franz Estebauer around the outside in blue, looking for the inside and for the race lead. James Rosso has got a little bit of green on the car. Doesn't get good traction off of turn number 1, though, and immediately finds himself hung out high and dry. Estebauer is going to spin. Which way is he going to spin? That was Glenn Riddell's question, who manages to avoid it. Some of those behind not so lucky, like Matthew Harriet, for example. But now Cam Edwards and Ray Oliver, James Rosso, your leading 3, and there's a massive checkup in the S's behind here. 3 wide through the Moss S into Atwood Curve. It's tight on the entry, and another driver goes around.
Cameron Dawes in the number 36, and car off. Liam Caplice has had his left rear completely obliterated on the exit of Atwood. Oh, this night goes from bad to worse for the number 20 machine, as the rest of the field will now try and recover. And my word, this has been absolute bedlam. Your best driver from race 1, Thor Tiller, up in P6. He's closely followed by Brody Watts, who's behind him in P7. The other drivers who are in that lead pack from race 1, a little bit further on back. It's P10 for Kyle Ridley, 11 for Josh Burton, and where has Lee Partridge? P13 for him at the moment, David. That's the other one I was looking for there, as they're still picking their way through the field.
So we'll have a look here. Yeah, that's Caplice just getting absolutely yeeted at the outside wall as drivers to the inside of him tried to avoid the spun cars, starting with Dawes there. The interlocked wheels just throw him with no regard at the wall, and he has had zero luck, almost negative luck in Formula V's, I reckon. Looking at James Nesbitt, who was the pole sitter, now go to 13th place as Lee Partridge gets past him. Great look at the 4-speed gearbox there as it sits behind the rear axle and out the tail.
Just listening more race control calls from the 143 at Caleb Black. Involving the 88 apparently, which is Matt Anderson, who's got back out on track. But nevertheless, plenty of action on track right now to worry about here. This is, yeah, fight for a P8 on backwards here. Sam Chapman in the 101, Burden and Newton, and then Kyle really trying to make it 3 wide, squeeze up the middle, and he will. Lee Partridge will try and get through as well as they close down on Chapman with the slipstream here, and the gaps left to the inside. Ridley will take that one quite happily, and that'll be P9 for him at the hairpin here as, oh, Chapman slow. Newton goes around with a tiny tap on the rear end. More cars involved in the exit, David.
Matthew Harriott in orange, I immediately spy, and Stephen Butcher has found the wall on the inside there as well. As it's a big checkup. Every driver wanted to be at the inside of the hairpin. They've learnt that that's the best line through there. Drivers around the outside don't really seem to hang on. And it causes a massive concertina effect to the cars braking on the inside. Race leader Ray Oliver there goes out just a little wide as Edwards, Riddell, and James Rosso continue to pursue him. Pole sitter in 15th now, but this is the leading group. I'd say about 2.5 seconds clear of 5th, 6th, 7th, but there are some quick drivers in that next group with Thortolla, Trevor Hearn, and especially Brody Watts, who moved through the field and caught gaps big time in race number 1.
Yeah, your front 4 setting times in the high 150s, and well, actually low 150 for Glenn Riddell on that last lap, 50.191. Puts him about on pace with drivers like Thortolla, but yeah. Hearn, Tuller, and Watts all working together. I think for now they will certainly focus on catching that group and making sure they have as much time in hand to fight there as possible. As we go to another replay here with Matthew Harriott in the number 16. Unfortunately, David, they're just a little too hot into its first corner and a bit of a half slide. Thankfully, it looks like it was at most minor contact with another driver there.
This is not a race 1 replay because the leader offers no defense towards the hairpin. Cam Edwards pulled to the inside, then Riddell pulled to the inside of that, and he goes through to the lead of the race, ahead of Edwards, ahead of Ray Oliver, ahead of James Rosso. So Ray Oliver almost content to go from first back into third at this point in the race. Not what we saw out of Bellac in race number 1. And this is, I'd call it the third group, the third pack of Burden, Chapman, and Lee Partridge, and they are far more gloves off.
Yeah, Chapman, pardon me, up the inside for the Redmond hairpin, but Burden will fend it off. And then the Hobbs hairpin allows the 44 to take the spot back, but Chapman would like one more piece of the inside pie, but get there at the penultimate corner as these three work their way around to the end of their 4th lap in this second race, already approaching half distance. Just, well, the action gets packed in pretty condensed here, of course, as here we go, Chapman to the inside, all the way up towards the wall here, David. Burden looking middle of the road. Partridge going to have to hang out at the back of the group for a little bit longer, it seems. They do make it through there as they continue to work each other over here into turn 2.
This is the lead. What will they do on the back straight this time? Last time, Ray Oliver, for the sort of good of the colony, I think, let them pass him and slot back into third place rather than aggressively and defending it in a costly way. So what will Riddell do? He's not immediately to the right-hand side of the circuit, a little middle of the road. That's actually pretty much the conventional racing line before you get to this left-hand kink. Tiny, tiny kink just before the hairpin. So Cam Edwards pulls to the inside there. Ray Oliver doesn't follow him down the inside, but follows him through the corner, still side by side. Edwards to the lead, not really any defense from Riddell.
I mean, if you want to keep the pace up, you're going to have to yield your spots as this race goes on. If you want to make sure that Thortolla, Trevor Hearn, or Brody Watts don't come and join your party. They are only about 2.3 seconds back off of James Russo here in 4th place. Mind you, that time Ray Oliver and Glenn Riddell scrapping all the way from the turn 5 hairpin through to Hobbs corner there at turn 9, back and forth between the two of them. But they sort that one out virtually as we look back here at this next group of cars. Focusing for a moment on Trevor Hearn, who had a bit of a quiet race one, David, but up into P6. 7 spots gained since the start of this one so far.
Great battles inside of the top 10 and all the way down to 16th, I think. No more inverted grids. Where you finish here is where you start race number 3. It's Caleb Bellac looking for a couple spots on Brandon Nealon. He gets one here. Still behind Tony Baker, having passed Brendan Nealon, with Sean McKenzie and Matthew Harriet behind.
Fierce here as Ballack back and forth through the Moss S, trying to find his way around Tony Baker here, but on the outside for the outward curve, that's going to hurt him a tiny bit. No, hang on. Oh, Tony Baker must have gone around here, dropping down the order as the 14. And in fact, no, she dropped off of the server and out to the pit lane. So, if I saw that correctly there, and I'll confirm that real quick. Indeed, yeah, has jumped to the pits there, so that's quite something there, unfortunately. Also, looks like unfortunately as well. So, oh, he's gone around as Tony Baker and bang into the wall and towed that thing back to the pits straight away there, David. So, also in some news, unfortunately, Liam Caplice has decided after 2 races of woe here in Okayama, that will do him for this second round of the National Formula Vee Esports Cup.
Past the halfway point in this race. Cam Edwards, Glenn Cito Riddle, Ray Oliver, James Russo as our top 4, and way less defensive than we saw in race number 1 at this point. Your leader just following the racing line towards turn number 1. Riddell closes on and lifts out of it. Ray Oliver closes on them, lifts out of it. And we've seen plenty of James Russo's perspective of the leading group as well. The next group didn't catch them on that lap. Sort of 151 from driver in 5th and sort of mid 150 from the leaders. So Hearn Tuller and Brody Watts not able to take any time out of the leaders last lap. Kyle Ridley's still in a awkward little no man's land in 8th, even though he's flying along there with a last lap of a 150.377 as his personal best, and very close to being the fastest lap of the race, actually, just shy of that by a couple tenths.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason I think we're not seeing that next group catch these leading drivers is because your race leader, whoever it may be, in this case it's Cam Edwards, or was, I should say, because up the inside goes Glenn Riddell, is they're not fighting aggressively here at the hairpin. Leader exchanges places, maybe 3rd and 4th, do a swapsy as well, and then they get back single file and get on racing and minimise the time loss in the process. Unlike what we saw, of course, in race 1 with the 2, 3, almost 4 wide and the constant scrapping for every bit of inside momentum. They can see, one move done at the hairpin, and then they make sure to carry on through this final part of the lap like they're not in a battle pack of 4, David.
Gosh, I wonder what's different this race to the last one. Going through the final 2 corners now. I'm still seeing potentially 4 more laps in this race, so the gloves don't have to come off just yet. Cam Edwards very close out of the final corner, and he will look to the inside for the race lead. Glenn Riddell on the outside, not really defending it. James Russo in 3rd, only reluctantly, I think, ending up with his nose down the inside of the final corner. He didn't want to, but they all woed up a little bit more in front of him than he could manage without spearing straight into them. So 1st and 2nd swap there. And not quicker than the group behind that lap. So they'll be desperately hoping that this battle kicks off for the lead so that they can try and catch. Glenn Riddell wants the lead back. It is getting just a tiny bit feistier as they're going to go side by side out of Atwood Curve and onto the back straight towards the hairpin. So it's going to have to try to find someone to slipstream off of. He was getting a big face full of fresh air and he realized that's not the way. I'll tuck in behind Riddell, then tuck back to the middle of the road. Try to slot the gap from the middle of the sandwich here. And it just washes out a little wide on him in the middle of the corner, and Glenn Riddell holds on to the race lead.
Yep, there's Burden, Partridge, and Chapman still going at it there. Still back though in 9th, 10th, and 11th. These three is Burden who comes out ahead this time by through the hairpin. But there we go, indeed. Yeah, looks like this top four have decided that the gloves indeed need to start coming off because they're willing to go 3 wide down the backstretch and keep fighting past the hairpin. And also just the other moves at the first corner and the outward curve as well. And I think, yeah, Trevor Hearn trying to drag around Brodie Watson, Thor Teller. They've just done a bit of an exchange themselves on this lap, I believe, if not only a lap or two ago as well. 2 seconds the margin to the back of the train ahead as they work their way off the corner. And yeah, Kyle Ridley still wringing the neck out of the number 7 machine. Still lapping almost on pace with the 3 cars ahead. And indeed, 151s for your top 4. That's not going to help them in their quest to stay ahead. They do have 3 laps to go according to my timing as well here, David. But so they might be able to hang on, but it's getting close.
Now you can quite plainly spot who are the teammates in the second group that are well incentivized to try to work together to catch the leaders. Brodie Watts and Trevor Hearn sandwiching Thor Tuller at the moment. They're able to work together and just place Tuller where they want to try and catch this leading group. You saw they only really need to find 1 second. They just need the leaders to keep this up for another lap or two, and they could be in and amongst it, making it a 7-way fight. Well, fans out in the group behind it, fans out for the lead as James Russo gets to the point of the field. Glenn Riddle drop back into second. He'll still be able to cover off Cam Edwards as Ray Oliver drops into 4th. It's not all to plan for the second group, and in the third group, Joshua Burden from Lee Partridge from Sam Chapman, they're having their own little fight into the hairpin as well.
Yeah, I almost call that as the third group in this race. Is yeah, Thor Tiller back to the lead of that group of 3. And then, yeah, behind Ridley, still Burden, Partridge, and McKenzie. Oh, sorry, Partridge. So, yeah, Burden, Partridge, Chapman. Somehow got myself all kinds of crisscross there. Apologies, folks. But yeah, really, it feels like all of these groups may be deciding it, well, 2 laps to go here at the line. Unless an accident happens, we're not really going to exchange places beyond the group that they're in. So I think people might be willing to start getting out the pitchforks here as it's Riddell up the inside of Russo at turn 1. Edwards follows through, but the inside here surely will be advantage Russo, and he should have it, but Edwards almost gets the run. Instead, he gets a little bit balked there, and it will be Ray Oliver looking for a way through, but he too doesn't have much way through the Moss S and will be on the outside for the outward curve.
Looks good for Riddell as they fight behind him and really check themselves up a little bit, slowed each other through turn number 2. That's also good news for Brodie Watts in the next group behind. He's only got to find, honestly, about half a second now to be catching the leading group. Got his teammate to work with there as well, and they will work together to box in Thor Tuller like a police chase, almost, squeezing him into one spot from which he can't escape. And Riddle holds on to the lead from Edwards. Russo back in 3rd. Ray Oliver still in 4th. The gap closing between the leading 4 and the next 3. Kyle Ridley not quite able to make any progress from his little no man's land that he's been in since about lap 2 of this race. There will only be 1 more to go when they cross the start-finish line next, and everyone will know where the timing line is now after race number 1.
Yeah, the mystery of a couple of drivers there who seem to back off perhaps a little too soon and do themselves no favours here as well. Glenn Riddell got his 1 lap reprieve at the hairpin, but they're now back bunched up and ready to roll. White flag in the hand of Barney for the second time, a 3 tonight as they head down the front stretch and have themselves a final circumnavigation of the Okayama International Circuit. The second race over and done with. It'll be Brodie Watts to lead the group of 3 to chase the leading 4 as Josh Burton, Lee Partridge both passed by Sam Chapman on the front straight away there. I just saw out of the corner of my eye, David, on the overlays. So yeah, plenty of action up and down the field. Caleb Ballack also wants in to that group as we go back to the lead.
Nothing to cover these leaders on the final lap, and Riddle will have to be so defensive into the hairpin like we've seen done before. He exits out of Atwood corner and immediately leaves not half a V, not a quarter of V, not even an eighth of a V space to the inside, which makes Cam Edwards have to look around the outside. It makes James Russo look 1 lane, 2 lanes, all the way across around the outside, and they're a complete 3 wide in towards the hairpin on the final lap for this one, but it's always going to be advantage the inside lane, and Glenn Riddell holds on. Ray Oliver has his nose in front, but he's up high and wide and in an ugly position as Cam Edwards is able to jump into second. It's almost impossible to make any moves without a mistake from the driver in front in the final remaining part of the lap, and Cam Edwards runs out wide, goes back into 4th place, is able to get it back on the pavement, facing the right way. He might just be able to hold on to that 4th with nothing more than needing a new pair of underwear after this one. Glenn Riddell is getting away with it at the lead as Ray Oliver and James Russo continue to fight 2nd and 3rd. If you're this close out of the final corner, you can make a move to where Barney stands at about exit. No one's going to catch Glenn Riddell. Ray Oliver comes off the final corner, and they're all slipstreaming on their way to the line. They cross it. Russo can't pull out in time. Battle between Phil Tuller sees him hold on and hold off Brody Watts, and Sam Chapman will hold on to the 9th, leading home. Joshua Burden, Lee Partridge, Caleb Bellack recovering the 12th place, and Sean McKenzie in 13th. Yellock and Nesbitt have obviously been watching the Indy 500 last weekend.
Yeah, they might not have the power, they might not have the grip, but they've got probably not that much less aero on these cars, and one might suggest.
It's not unleashing the dragon, it's unleashing the gecko, potentially.
Yeah, I can work with that. That seems vaguely appropriate, but we'll have to wait for one more race before we can see some of that action. Here are your results. Provisional, of course, for the second race of 3 here for the Formula Vee National Esports Cup at Okayama, and indeed Glenn Riddell half a second clear of Ray Oliver there to the line. Able to work his way up to second on that final lap, with James Russo and Cam Edwards settling for 3rd and 4th out of the lead pack. For Teller leads a 9-4-9 duo of Brody Watts and Trevor Hearn home, 5, 6 and 7 for them. Kyle Ridley home there in 8th, with Sam Chapman able to get ahead of Josh Burden to round out your top 10 there, David.
And just behind them, Lee Partridge, Caleb Bellack in the end, only 10 seconds off the lead despite the big incident we saw. For him, Sean McKenzie, Matthew Harriet, Brendan Nealon, Alex Newton, Matthew Bielek, James Nesbitt, Cameron Dawes and Franz Estabauer as the top 20. No invert going into race number 3. How they finish here is how they will start that one. Patrick Harding, Stephen Butcher, Damien Spinks is 23rd. Matt Anderson a lap down in 24th, and we're going to see no more of Tony Baker from what I know, and also probably true of Liam Caplice. The drivers get a little more of a gap and a break. I tried to put those two words into one together and it didn't work. Between race number 2 and race number 3, and so will we. Formula Vee National Esports Cup, brought to us by Southern Cross Esports, a Motorsport Australia Esports series, and VRace Experience, Echuca Toyota and Giant Mandurah. In just a couple of minutes, we'll be back for the final of 3 races, round 2 of the Formula Vee National Esports Cup.
It's motorsport, but not as you know it. Test yourself and your everyday road car. Safe, affordable, but most of all, fun. And all you need is your daily driver. Experience the thrill of a sprint day, race against the clock at a hill climb, or test your reflexes with an auto test. It takes just 3 simple steps to get started. Get on the start line. Search Motorsport Australia Daily Driver today. Weekend in, weekend out, Motorsport Australia officials are making waves. From waving flags, waving cars through pit lane, or responding to a wave for help. Wave hello to new lifelong friends. Who knows, you might just make waves around the world. Ride the first wave. Search Motorsport Australia officials today.
World of Outlaws Dirt Racing is available now. Download your copy today.
So we're back at Okayama International Circuit for round 2 of the Formula Vee National Esports Cup, presented by Southern Cross Esports and Motorsport Australia. We've had 2 very exciting races, both of them. I don't think we've ever seen less than 4 cars within 1 second of the leader. You just cannot, in these cars, get away easily in the lead. And it really makes the drivers think about their racecraft, about timing their run and how to be in the perfect spot at the perfect time. And the perfect time is, of course, coming out of the final corner to the checkered flag 20 minutes after the green flag waved at the start. David Haynes with Dan Yeaman. Dan, no reverse grids into this race number 3. I mean, the drivers we just saw racing up front could very well continue to do it in race number 3, but also always got to be thinking, where can Caleb Bellack get in this one?
Yeah, not quite the race 2 he would have liked, I'm sure. Unfortunately, getting entangled with Tony Baker early on in the race. And potentially a post-race penalty hanging over his head, I think, although apologies to the race control team if that's not the case, and I've just wasn't quite able to hear what they said over the radio during the session, but I think, yeah, realistically there are a lot of people who could win this race if they keep their nose clean. As we look to this 3rd and final race starting grid, Glenn Riddell with the race 2 win starts off pole, sharing the front row with Ray Oliver to his inside. James Russo, Cam Edwards on row 2, Thor Tuller and Brody Watts will round out your top 6. Trevor Hearn and Kyle Ridley on the 4th row. Sam Chapman, Josh Burden to round out your top 10 with Lee Partridge and Caleb Ballack on that 6th row. So almost halfway through the grid here and halfway through the timer, David.
Yeah, no surprises on this grid, just exactly as they finished race number 1. All the way through from top to tail, and the drivers who've got work to do in race number 3, I reckon it could be Tony Baker if we see him in this race, but also Franz Estebauer potentially starting out at 20th when we saw him battling for the race lead right at the start of race number 2 before he went around. And then, of course, Caleb Ballack is starting 12th. Can he come back for another race win? Glenn Riddell starts on the pole position as the green flag drops, and he gets a decent getaway. Ray Oliver out of 2nd. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to challenge him. And on cold tyres, they do want to get to the racing line through the opening couple of corners. To get out wide, there is no grip there when the tyres aren't warm and aren't pressured just right. So pole field towards turn number 2, off camber then, and you can tell forward from about Lee Partridge, that group's got a little bit of a jump on the drivers behind. Sean McKenzie's gotten ahead of Caleb Ballack off the standing start. Ballack will look to get that back very, very quickly. Riddell's still leading them into Atwood Curve, but they're 3 wide as throwing it down the inside. I think with Sam Chapman on Kyle Ridley.
Oh, big trouble further on back. Stephen Butcher. Who else have we got here involved? Matt Anderson, Damian Spinks, and Tony Baker. And, Liam Caplice, I swear. The man has just going to need to wave a white flag. A lot of trouble down in that wood curve. As meanwhile, for the lead, Ray Oliver to the outside of Glenn Riddell. But once again, that inside for the hairpin will enable the driver of the Pulse Echuca number 4 to take that spot back. As it's then Russo, Edwards, Tuller, Watts, Hearn, Partridge, Burden and Chapman in your top 10. But the pack sends all the way back to that P14 there with Matthew Harriott in that bright orange machine as they work their way up to the Redmond-Hobbs hairpin complex for the first time as Partridge up the inside goes to 7th here towards the end of lap 1, David.
4 positions gained already in this lap for Lee Partridge. He's been a machine, and you saw him pick off another one in a place that you haven't seen so many moves happen. It's Caleb Bellack looking to the inside of Sam Chapman, but he's not going to get down the inside of the penultimate corner. And off the final corner, Glenn Riddell still leads, but the drivers behind have a good run. The minute you flick up into 4th gear in these cars, you start to stall out a little bit, and the driver behind really enjoys the slipstream. So Riddell will probably go back to 2nd. They're 3 wide in the positions behind, as it looked like Russo. No, he's still up in 3rd. Someone else, Brody Watts and Joshua Burden there with Lee Partridge. They were 3 wide, now still 2 wide in turn number 2. And Lee Partridge finds himself probably positioned best on the inside of the corner. Burden has a great run off at turn 2, though, to give him the inside for Atwood.
Here we go, 2 by 2, plus Bellack on the inside somewhere here for Atwood as it's 3 wide on the second row. Oh my word, Kyle Ridley, I think that was barely avoiding contact with, who is the car? It's Trevor Hearn, I think, dropped down the order of the 949. It's gotten entangled there, but that's split that group a bit there. As you can see that, we've got 2 rows, 2 wide, 3 deep, your top 6, and it's 4 wide as they fan out in the second pack here. Burden on the inside, he gives up, so it's Ballack, Partridge, and Ridley as they head down to the hairpin, and with Ballack on the inside this time, he should be good. Oh, Burden checks up, and that causes Harry into his back bumper. Chapman back into the equation with this bunch of cars here as James Russo is, that's Cam Edwards as well. Multiple cars off here at Revolver and Piper on this second lap. All of a sudden, bedlam occurring here in the mid-pack.
Well, up front was where the bedlam was. Those drivers are in the top 5 ahead of the Partridge, Bellack, Brody Watts, etc. battle, and they've come together. They've gone off the road. And this is how... Oh, that's Russo throwing the nose in a little deep, potentially, and maybe a little late to Cam Edwards. And now it's Riddell leading from Oliver. A little bit of space to Thortola. Brody Watts. Caleb Bellack here in 6th. There goes the Snake. Top 2. This could be the smallest breakaway we've seen all night.
Maybe, but in that case, I don't think it'll last all that long. Unless they're really smart about when they make their exchanges, as the first race penalty of the night has been issued. Goes to the 75 of Damien Spinks for contact on lap number 1. For him, unfortunately, it looks like we've had, well, unfortunately for Liam Caplice, I think he's actually decided, that lap 1 to him again, as we're going to see on the replay here, David, why exactly Spinks has got the driver, and you can see how Atwood curve up the inside of Stephen Butcher. Oh dear, runs all over the top of him, and then Patrick Harding, I think, was involved in contact-wise, but gets away. Let's go back to live pictures, David. It's also, Ray Oliver from the front spins. He'll lose some spots, but not too much, it seems.
Yeah, as it leaves Glenn Riddell all alone up front and leaves this pack for 2nd place. In an absolute state, where Caleb Bellack now sits in 2nd. He's moved up 10 positions in this race so far. This is what happened. He just gets in too hot. Once it starts going out wide, loses the camber. There's no grip there. Not too much harm done, but what it does is it takes him away from the race lead and puts him back into the pack for 2nd. Sitting in 7th at the moment, but he's under all sorts of pressure from some really quick guys like Lee Partridge and Joshua Burden. And it's Burden just behind him, Sam Chapman behind that, into the final corner.
Yeah, we've got ourselves into that big train as they work their way down the straight, and a little bit of a movement from Bellack there to cover from Brody Watts. And we'll go side by side for turn 1, but Bellack holds on to the spot as his elbow then put the foot down, fan out. Now, he's just gone almost 1.2, almost 1.25 seconds faster than Glenn Riddell on the last lap there. So keeps that pace up. Unfortunately, Glenn is not going to be able to enjoy his moment in the sun. And in fact, Caleb is basically instructing Brody and co behind to get in line and play the game or follow the leader here, David.
Well, we'll see if the drivers behind him are good at playing that game. Brody Watts isn't, and is going to keep him trapped to the left-hand side of the track as they head towards the hairpin. Thortalla with a good move, but Belak comes across to cover that one to try to hold on to third place. Into the banking of the hairpin, Glenn Riddell's lead remains 1.6 seconds over Brody Watts, who now runs second, to the ire of Caleb Belak, but what are you going to do about it?
I mean, two schools of thought perhaps in the moment. On one hand, you have one person that just stays out in front, regardless of what happens. But I'd almost argue that the better option in a car like this is such low powers. We're on board here with Ray Oliver back in pit. Sam Chapman's nose and tyre is pretty much
we got a good look at his tyre
gearbox.
pressure monitoring there, didn't we?
Well, it was inflated. We can say that at the very least. But just sort of, yeah, school one is Belak stays out in front, which is good if Balak's quicker around the entire circuit. But the alternative is just exchange places down the straights with the tow and let the car that gets the slingshot to take the lead into the corner, as we see Chapman do exactly that on Ray Oliver. Looks for the inside at the first corner, but Oliver is going to have that run. Not quite, no. They're going to go neck and neck into the second corner as James Russo is getting a drive-through penalty. I believe I heard, turn 6, the contact with Cam Edwards on lap 1. So there we go, indeed, agreeing with your assessment when we looked at the replay, David, that in a bit too hot there for Russo when he went for that move.
Oh, got a spinner there from Sam Chapman dropping back. He was trying to get down the inside of Atwood Curve, and we've seen a couple of drivers do that, lose the rear on the tight line in there as it gets off camber on them, tightens them up, and the rear wants to let go. 1.5 seconds, Glenn Riddell's lead, as it's now a lead to Caleb Belak, who goes through into second over Brody Watts. Still got Thortalla, Lee Partridge, and Kyle Ridley to the group behind. And then we've got a whole another group, and then behind that, Sean McKenzie from Cam Dawes, Alexander Newton, Matthew Harriott there, and Brendan Nealon as well.
I argue that group goes all the way back to Matthew Bielek in 17th. Close enough to be part of it, I'd say. But crucially, at the front of the field, the slingshotting is not really doing a huge amount for Belak and Watts. They've gained maybe a tenth on Glenn Riddell as they work their way around the last corner once again, almost at the halfway mark already here, David, and then a lap 5 as Russo will come down to take that drive-through penalty. Here, unfortunately, that's not the pit speed line at Okayama. He's been duped. There's the cones. That's the start of the pit speed limit.
An absolute classic. Now it's a drive-through, and he was angling towards his pit box, but it was a drive-through. So we'll see exactly what comes of that for James Russo. 1.4 second lead for Glenn Cito Riddle over Caleb Belak, who's got another car length or so advantage over third place, which will give him the ability to just run the lines he wants and not worry so much about the group behind. I think that could be the ends for Glenn Riddell's breakaway if Caleb Belak just gets a clean lap or two to chip away, find that, I'd say about 0.3 of a second he needs to be in the slipstream and putting the pressure on Glenn Riddell. But he's now got to defend from Brody Watts, who's going to run him so close. Wheels interleaved, but not interlocked as they came through the hairpin. Lee Partridge wants to shoot through on the both of them as they battle. He has to go around the outside, and he goes to third. Belak to second. No dice for Brody Watts.
And just like that, 0.7 of a second. Nope, make that about almost a full second gained for Glenn Riddell. The momentum in these cars is so critical. And just like that, he's now just been given a monumental breather. I reckon they were on the cusp of some kind of tow from the race leader. And now they're going to have to work so much harder as Lee Partridge worked his way up into second. And it's kind of surprising that they're not actually being a little more proactive with the working together here at this point. Still, as we come to the end of lap 6, just under 9 minutes of racing to go in this final race here from Okayama. And the drivers here in this group, they could easily go and catch the leader as it's Partridge up the inside. He gets job done on Belak and causes Belak to lose all kinds of momentum. Now, Brody Watts wants a piece of the pie into turn 2, but he's not going to get alongside there. And so they'll have to stay single file. But it's moves like these. It's just sort of like... Now, they've actually been told to keep off the radios, David, so they can't talk as much as they were trying to coordinate themselves. But looks like the coordination is going to be out the window if Brody Watts keeps up moves like that.
You rub your hands and lick your lips if you're Glenn Riddell, seeing what's happening behind now. They can't work together. They can't catch him, and his lead's out to 2.3 seconds. And another opportunity for them to go 2 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide in towards the hairpin and all slow each other up. So at the moment, it's Partridge, middle of the road. Brody Watts looking around the outside of him, but Caleb Belak's looking to the inside, in towards that second place. Partridge tries to squeeze him just a little bit. Will maintain the inside into the corner down the hill. That's critical, but he's just going to run out of overlap as they get to the next left-hander at Piper. Belak back to second. Partridge and Watts. And it's a great little group here now.
Sure is, but it's more momentum lost, more time lost to the race leader, and I get the feeling if this carries on, they're going to have to, well, they're going to have already started waving their white flag when it comes to the chance for the lead, and despite what I was not expecting, it might just happen here tonight in this third and final race where one driver able to get clear of the trailing Hawks. The fact that we have everyone else from second through to 7th, no, pardon me, not quite 7th, though, all the way back to 9th in one happy long line here. Really does say something as to the way you drive these cars. And as I've just been reminded by Director Jay Kennedy, are they truly happy if they've been able to let the leader go? Ooh,
here we
David
go,
Hayes
side by side
asking
into turn number 2. That's what you tune into Sim Speed for, not quite. And it's Burden and Hearn. Hey, Oliver was not going to play that game down the pit straight. If you saw, he was the only driver who just followed the racing line as the rest of them fanned out across trying to follow Caleb Belak. Still a couple of laps left in this one. Glenn Riddell's lead looking good with 2.6 seconds. Caleb Belak there, always easy to spot in second place. And they are so compact, so tight in this group behind him. Can any of them change lanes without tangling with the other? None of them can get close enough to try to take second away from Belak either. They do just touch, and they just get away with it. Kyle Ridley and Brody Watts at the apex of the hairpin, within a millimetre or closer. Neither of them lose out because of it.
Well, Belak got his wish, I think, won finally a lap where his momentum through the hairpin, and Revolver and Piper subsequently after that was finally unaffected. But it seems to me that, well, Riddell's got an answer for him still all the same. Lapping pretty equally here as we jump on board with Brody Watts, looking out the back of his V towards Lee Partridge. Also got Thor Tuller there. 6th place for the number 90 machine with Trevor Hearn, Josh Burden, Ray Olver rounding out the group. Here we go now. Partridge to the inside, up against the pit wall as Brody Watts will squeeze him down. But they swing back out to the racing line, and Partridge will mostly have the spot done. But again, here comes the swing. That nice long run around the outside of turn 1, David. Really good if you want to hang on to your spot for turn 2.
Just opens up a little bit on the outside of 1 there. The radius of the corner just opens up slightly where the drivers around the outside who think they might have gotten a bit too hot suddenly just find enough road to hold on there to get to the inside of turn number 2 and keep position or gain position, whichever one it may be. They are not. This group is not catching the race leader, but what they are having is an awesome, amazing scrap that absolutely typifies the Formula Vee racing that we're seeing not only around the circuits of Australia, but also here in the National Esports Cup. Belak side by side with Ridley here, squeezing him across out wide, and he's going to lose the rear and just just hold on to it with a wiggle, but Brody Watts could come around the outside of him in the next corner. Lee Partridge almost gets touched in towards that left-hander as well, and the only winner is Caleb Bellack.
He's a couple of car lengths to breathe. But yeah, gap has edged its way up to 3 seconds in the past 2 or so laps since they lost their big chunk of time. Oh, my word, which one of them is that around? It's Brody Watts has gone across the nose of the entire group, has somehow avoided every single one of them. But we're now down from, well, that was a group of, what's that, 7? Make it 6. Sorry, it was 8, make it 7, apologies. As we've got to look, and just a bit too wide, David, and puts the right rear over the curb, over the Astro, and finds the actual grass there on the exit.
This is live. He touches the wall. Is there going to be a car width down the inside? There just will be for Trevor Hearn up against Kyle Ridley. Lee Partridge swoops into this group as well, looking to come around the outside of 1 to the inside of 2. Oh, so familiar, that maneuver, and he might just do it. But that was everything on the line from Trevor Hearn. Touched the pit wall, just dodged his teammate a couple corners earlier, and he is having one in the final race right here from Okayama. Riddell's lead still good. Caleb Bellack has broken away from this group, and he'll be thinking, why couldn't I have done this 5 laps earlier? But it don't always work like that. Kyle Ridley's in 3rd, and then they're 3 wide behind that, 2 wide behind that. Putting it all on the line here. Partridge, Hearn, and Tuller are side by side. Tuller might be a bit too far back. That was Joshua Burden who had a run, trying to make it 4 wide there as well at the hairpin. How about the group behind? Here's Cam Edwards behind Sean McKenzie, side by side with Matthew Harriott, trying to defend his position. From Alexander Newton and Cameron Dawes, who's halfway around there at Piper. Unless I'm seeing things.
There's some chonk back at the hairpin, but I think the front group are okay. They got through all right. Unfortunately, it's Tony Baker who's ended up the wrong way on approach to the hairpin. And Stephen Butcher also going slow there on the exit of the turn. I did see Thor Tuller drop towards the back of that leading group. But all in all, they're carrying on as they will receive the white flag for the final time tonight from Barney to begin wrapping up proceedings here from Okayama's. Once again, Trevor Hearn, contact this time with Kyle Ridley. Neither one gives up. Ridley's picked up. Hearn's going to go around. It's going to take all of them out from this second group. My word.
Mayhem at turn number 1. No driver wanting to give in. No driver wanting to give quarter. It was messy, and it continues in turn number 2. McKenzie is off. Who else is off with him? It's either Watts or Hearn. It's Hearn. So on the final lap, it all goes sideways at 1 and 2, and it's continuing at Atwood Curve as Edwards and Harriott collide. Harriott rejoins at the apex of Atwood Curve, and they almost make contact there as well. It's been so good to that point, and the fireworks go off on the final lap of the final race. 1st and 2nd maybe locked in. 3rd and 4th are side by side on the straight towards the hairpin. Burden's got the inside. He's trying to move Partridge across a little bit as they both dive into that hairpin. It is the inside line that is always where you want to be, and that's Burden to 3rd place. Behind them, splayed out everywhere, Alexander Newton's trying to hold on to 5th. This is what happened at turn number 1. Again, is there a V's width up against the wall? Yes, but the track narrows in towards 1.
Yeah, it was a real
case.
case.
End in tears.
Yeah, a real case.
Out of the penultimate corner, Glenn Riddell leads them though. He's maintained this lead for most of the race. They tried to catch him. They couldn't work together, and he takes the race win back to back. From race 1 to race 2, the checkered flag is there, Glenn Riddell. Don't celebrate too early. It's where Barney's got it, and he just holds on from Caleb Bellack in 3rd. Joshua Burden, Lee Partridge pulls out. The overlap comes just too late, and it will be a drag race for the drivers behind. For Newton, for Dawes, and Brody Watts picks off Matthew Harriott to the checkered flag.
Well,
And Franz Estebauer and James Rosso. Rosso has served his penalty. Come on, pull up for the side draft. I think Esteban quite clearly had that one. By, 2,000ths of a second, Esteban had it. And, I called it. I could tell that. Sorry.
Well, that was one heck of a race finish. And now, with that one there, now I don't know who's provisionally. Now, I'll actually be able to remind you, the results are most definitely provisional for race 3 because of the number of incidents that seem to pop off there at the end of the race. So I don't know if Glenn's Riddell with 2 race wins would be able to edge out Ballack with, because it's all about their worst result tonight, which was a P14 in race 1 for Riddell, and P12 in race 2 for Ballack. But nevertheless, let's have a look here at how they came across the line here for the final race of the evening with Riddell 1.8 seconds, call 1.9 clear of Caleb Ballack there. And I have to say, it's actually a really good turnaround for Ballack. David got that gap down from over 3 seconds to almost 1.9, but
It all happened between the final quarter of the checkered flag, though.
Possibly. I mean, I guess I wasn't paying enough attention to that point because, can you blame me, though? We had a lot going on everywhere else. Josh Burton eking out Lee Partridge for the final podium of the evening here with Kyle Ridley coming home in P5 to finish off instead of Alex Newton there and Cameron Dawes. Really tight race between those two drivers to wrap things up. Brody Watts in P8 with his late recovery there. And Matthew Harriet and Sam Chapman to round out the top 10 in this third and final race.
11th, Brendan Nealon, Tortella, Sean McKenzie there in 13th from Milek, James Nesbitt, Trevor Hearn, Matt Anderson. How about the gap, Franz Esteban to James Rosso? I thought I called it right. It was a lot closer than I thought. Esteban from Rosso from Ray Oliver to 20th, and behind them, Patrick Harding and Tony Baker. No, Patrick Harding and Cam Edwards. Okay, and then Tony Baker. That's got to be confused about Cam Edwards. Cam Edwards will end up dropping back to 1 lap down after that.
Yes, he will. In fact, that is what has come through on iRacing's end at the very least. Unfortunately, Cam Edwards having to tow there due to the damage sustained on the final lap of that one. Well, looks like we've got some drivers starting to filter on in. As looks like we might have our first interview for the evening, Dave, which I'll hand back to you for this first one. Looks like Josh Burton awaiting us in the comments box. 2 podiums to his name. I think we'll start with him here tonight.
Well, Josh Burton, 2 podiums, 1/10. That middle race is always going to be something, but it delivered in race number 3 as well. Completely unexpected.
Yeah, nice, consistent night for once. Yeah, got a bit lucky in race 3 there, but yeah, had probably the pace in race 2 for where I finished, so, in race 1 for where I finished, sorry. So I was pretty happy with that.
Okayama then, compared to where we were at round 1 with the longer straights of Silverstone, a lot of it seemed like if you got to the inside of that hairpin, you could hold on to a race lead, to a pack lead from there all the way around the back half of the lap.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably, even though the toe is so strong, it's still a bit hard to pass if you had the inside line halfway down the back straight, just because people couldn't really hold it around the outside there. So yeah, it was hard to get to the front from where we were. A lot harder than previous rounds, but we got there in the end.
What's qualifying like then in these big grids of Formula V's and just the 2 flying laps to try to put a good time to the board?
Really, you just got to maximise your second lap, especially at this track. Last week, last round, my pole lap was the first lap, but this week it seemed to be the tyres like the second lap a bit better. So yeah, we just got to try and maybe put a banker down on your first lap and then just go for it on your second lap, and pays off for this round for me at least.
Consistency is going to be key. It's a long championship, so we look forward to seeing you next round, and best of luck.
Yeah, cheers guys. Thanks for the broadcast.
Joshua Burton, 2 podiums to his name, and Dan, I'm sure you'll find someone with a story to tell you.
Yes, indeed. I'll bring in Caleb Ballack as our race 1 winner and second place tonight in race number 3. And well, my first time in the comms box, Caleb, to watch this series unfold. So a bit of an eye-opener there for me. But what's it like there on track for you tonight? Great scrapping in race 1, of course, with that group up front. But obviously a bit of a tough one trying to work your way through the invert in race 2.
Yeah, it was tough working the way through the invert, starting P20 after race 1 win, but was working my way forward until I unfortunately got tangled on that one and just reset me all the way back to the back, and I had to start working again.
Yeah, obviously not a lot of time to be able to reset your progress. It doesn't help things. And then there in race 3, again, the pack built up, but obviously Glenn tonight able to get out ahead with starting on pole after his race 2 win. Just looked like you guys in that chasing group couldn't quite form up the way it sounded like you wanted to over the radio as well, to be able to hunt him down, and then sort of it really turned into about 3 or 4 laps ago, you sort of also a group agreement to sort of just fight it out for second place and see who could come out on top.
Yeah, I knew that we had the pace to catch Glenn, so I was trying to get them to work together and catch them, but Brody didn't seem to want to, so he just started scrapping for it, and from there we started losing and couldn't catch back up.
Well, you were able to get clear towards the end of that one as the fighting intensified and got you a chance to break free. So you got yourself some clean air all the same. And well, yeah, a race win and a second place to your name. Hopefully fairly happy with that result, all things considered.
Yeah, fairly happy. Always like to get a second win, but sometimes you can't take that. So we'll settle for this.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing how things go. And got now about 3 weeks till we'll see the series back on track again, heading across the pond from Asia to America, Barber Motorsports Park. You had a chance to drive that track before on the service, and any thoughts about what that might entail for the series here?
No, never driven the track, but from what I've looked at the track map, it looks to be pretty fast and flowy. Should be some good racing.
That's certainly what I would like to think as well when the series heads there in 3 weeks' time. Before we let you go, Caleb, who do you want to thank tonight for your results?
I'd like to thank my sponsors, Pioneer DJ, for getting on board behind me, and my parents for letting me stay up late.
There we are, Caleb Ballack, P1 in race 1, P2 in race 3. And I believe that will be second for the round as well. We'll have time for one final interview, and I'll hand back to you, David, to speak with our provisional round winner, I believe, as well, Glenn Riddell.
Hey, guys.
Put an asterisk on that one for the moment, but he did come away with 2 wins. I think the toughest point for you might have been starting 6th but finishing race 1 in 14th.
Yeah, best we just bury that and don't even bring it up, I reckon.
So, race 2, 7th to 1st place then, huh, Glenn?
Yeah. Nah, obviously a racing incident or whatever happened there at turn 1 in the first one, but those things happen. Yeah, I haven't driven the Formula Vee since the last round of this series, and just jumped on for the practice. And I was a bit all over the shop at the start, but got a bit of a rhythm in clear air at the end, and thought I might have gone alright and qualified alright. But I guess that reverse top 20 helped me out for Heat 2.
Yeah, it's always going to sort of put the drivers who start well back, and the drivers who have a tough start, forward with a chance to recover. So in that way, it makes it a nigh impossibility for anyone to come through with a clean sweep. You've probably done the closest that was possible without that.
Yeah, it's the Formula Vee is all about slipstream, really, isn't it? And it was that second heat was really good with those boys up the front there. We all drove clean, and it was a good battle. And then the final, I was a bit, I guess, sort of lucky to get that bit of a gap, and then I was just praying that they'd battle, and luckily they did, and just allowed me to sort of sneak away.
Yeah, once you were free, did you ever look back?
Oh, you always watch the relative, because you don't want to, drop the ball, and also, if you start to back off or take it easy, then it's when you tend to make mistakes, I guess. I didn't really take it easy till the last lap, then I just sort of cruised around. But yeah, I'll take it. It's hard to get a win in these cars, so happy with tonight's efforts.
I feel like there's sort of at least 10, maybe 15 drivers who could take a win if things fall their way or they time their run right at any given round. So I think with that said, pretty good result to come away with 2 wins, and could call the round. And I think Caleb Bellack's actually got a slightly better average finishing position than you, but you've definitely got more silverware to go home with.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we did a Formula Ford race last night, and actually Caleb won and I got second, so it's good to get one back on him.
So be a little bit till we get to round 3, but I've never seen cars race on the short A configuration of Barber before, so I'm looking forward to it.
I think I've done it once in another league, if my memory serves correct. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago. So yeah, we'll just rock up and see what happens.
And we look forward to seeing you there. We look forward to covering it. You've got a couple of sponsors on your car, Glenn.
Yeah, so we've got Pulse Tuning, which is my company, involved in karting, so mainly specialising in engine building and tuning. Echuca Toyota, who's a series sponsor as well, and Ravenol Oil.
Briltastic. Catch you around.
All right, thanks, boys. See you next time.
Everyone, we've got to speak to some race winners, some championship leaders. Definitely Caleb Bellack, I suspect, still holding on to that race lead with overall some pretty consistent performances there. So he'll hold on to the championship lead. But there is a long way to go in this season, including next round, 21st of June, from Barber on the short A configuration. Again, never seen it used before, but Dan, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will. Unfortunately, I'm not expecting to be in the comms box. You'll have Scott Rankin back with you, David, and for everyone who's watching along with you for that coverage. But yeah, as you said, I too have never seen the short A configuration used. Although, if there was going to be a car, I think this might be the one to use it with. So that will be an interesting circuit watch. It does mean you miss out, I think, unfortunately, on the wonderful museum section of the course, as they will cut through from the hairpin to the backstretch chicane. But nevertheless, yeah, this could definitely be an interesting one. I think I have to do my best to tune in and see how the drivers tackle it here, because yeah, close pack racing cars on a relatively short track could be an exciting one to watch in this 3rd round of the season.
Googled it. That medical helicopter is definitely a Eurocopter EC-135 that we'll get to see again at Barber in a couple of weeks. You'll see it here on SimSpeed TV when the Formula Vee National Esports Cup continues, supported by Southern Cross Esports, Motorsport Australia Esports, VRace Experience, Echuca Toyota, like Glenn Riddell told us, and Giant Mandurah. That'll be round 3 from Barber. Catch you then.
It's motorsport, but not as you know it. Test yourself and your everyday road car. Safe, affordable, but most of all, fun. And all you need is your daily driver. Experience the thrill of a sprint day. Race against the clock at a hill climb. Or test your reflexes with an auto test. It takes just 3 simple steps to get started. Get on the start line. Search Motorsport Australia Daily Driver today.